Hey guys, Joe Schmidt here. Finally getting my assignment in. Um, I've read Marshall multiple times. It is a very, very, very hard read. So I guess I'm just going to summarize what I read or from what I understood, what Strauss and many of the debates or topics that we read in Marshall, what it is. So what I got out of it was um, myth, the way Strauss is using it, is being characterized as a genre, like the tale like about Hercules or some other Greek god would qualify as being a myth genre also. Then we see Dunn make a short case that allegorical interpretation is just another way of treating the biblical text as if it were a myth genre. So during the Enlightenment, reasoning and science were seen as the supreme authorities. So Strauss was trying to reconcile Enlightenment authorities with the authority of the Bible. In other words, he was trying to show that the Bible is not as authoritative as people that it was. So what Strauss did was he made the case that the four Gospels were not works of historical genre, but the myth genre. This made it so that the Gospels, especially the miracles they talked about, didn't have to be defended as history. Strauss then categorized the miracles, some of which were made up wholesale, like Hercules, who was totally made up, and others that began in history but grew in legend, like Saint Nicholas, who was a real guy but really doesn't have flying reindeer. And what Strauss says is most important is not the historicity, but the idea that it conveys. In other words, what is important is not that Jesus performed a miracle, but rather that his followers had the idea that he did. Dunn then goes to make the case that the same thought pattern of Strauss had been applied to other parts of scriptures, so that miracles, stories like creation, the flood, the splitting of the Red Sea, and other things actually don't come from history, as in they don't really happen. Rather, they find their source in various myths based on both Judaism and Hellenism, primarily in Greek mythology. Then Dunn then summarizes the whole thing as a way to strip the Bible of any real authority. In the section of Bultmann, Dunn notes that the problem of miracles wasn't really treated as a problem, but by people in the church, because what really matters is what Jesus taught, not really happened, or not really what happened. Along came Bultmann, then, who blew the idea out of the water because Strauss' proposal doesn't work. Strauss said that the Gospels is found in the teachings of Jesus, the 9 myths parts of the Gospel. Bultmann disagreed. He thinks that the Gospels is found thinks the Gospels is found in the myths. Bultmann didn't want to defend the historicity of the myths as we would, but rather wants to see the truths that those myths point to. In other words, what matters is not if they happened, but why they were written down. From the start, Dunn says that Bultmann made a bunch of unfounded presumptions to make his case, so it doesn't hold together well. But the real problem is objectifying God, meaning what are we to do with the claims that God actually did stuff in human history? If he did, then the stuff isn't myth, but history. And if it is history, then we can't interpret it as if it were a myth. So, a lot of this stuff is still happening today. Now, I mean, that's what I read in Marshall. I may have got a completely different, I guess, interpretation of what Marshall's trying to say. It is really hard to read that Marshall book, but it's some interesting stuff where I've never heard before. But I guess from that chapter that we were supposed to discuss in this video, that's what I got out of it. So hopefully I got the right stuff and me not, I guess, trying to create my own meaning. But yeah, so putting into my own words, that's what I would say, my own words. So thanks for listening. Sorry again for the late video. Just got out on Wednesday night back from this trip, but it was great. So great class. Um, learned a lot. So over and out. Thanks, guys.